In this challenge review, we're going to add 100 gems to our player when they finish watching our ad. Now there's a couple of design decisions to take into account here. This is my manager class. My manager class really shouldn't have any references to the player and access the player directly. Really, manager classes should only be communicating between each other, like other manager classes, and then the player or the shop communicates with the manager and it runs some tasks. So that's ideally what we want to do here. We want to basically keep this functionality for just the ads manager as is. Now, that being said, we do need to modify the player's gems. That's the only way we can actually award 100 gems, right? So if we look here, on the player, it has a function called add gems, and we can add a count. Now, what we could do here is we could actually move this logic to a game manager, and we could basically tell the game manager to give our player 100 gems. And basically it will then modify, it will do all the logic for modifying the UI instances. It will update the UI there, and then we just have to then manually update the shop. But the point is that we have a function here that we could technically remove from the player and add it to the game manager. So to do this, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up our game manager in Visual Studios. And within here, what I'm going to do here is we're going to create a function to access our player here. So the game manager is allowed to have a reference to our player. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to say here, we're going to say, we'll say public player, and then let's call this player. And it'll just be a property, and it's going to be a private property. So for this property, we want to get the player, but we never want to reassign the player. So we're going to say get and then private set. And that's going to make it so that we can't reassign the player. Only the game manager can, and us having access to it, we're never going to do that. So here we have public player, and that's going to allow us to then type instance.player, and we'll be able to access it. From here, we need to actually assign the player. So we're going to say player equals, and we need to find the player at the start of the game. So GameObject.find, and then once we find it, we're looking for the player. And actually, we want to find this by tag. So here we're going to say GameObject.find GameObject with tag. Make sure you select the singular version. So now that we found the player, we have, let's see here, player equals GameObject.find GameObject with player, and now I need to get the component off the player. And there we go. So now we have access to our player from the game manager. What I can then do is inside of our ads manager, we can say, let's go ahead and remove this pseudocode here. We can then say show rewarded ad. We're going to call this, and then here is where we award the gems. So what I can do now is I can actually say game manager. I can call the game manager .instance.player, and I can actually call the add gems method, which will handle all of the UI updates. So here we're going to say player.addGems. And what we're going to do here is we're going to add 100. Let's save this, and let's save the game. Now this is going to update the UI of our character profile. That's not going to update the UI of the shop. So let's go ahead though and just test this out. Go ahead and let Unity compile. Let's run the game. All right, I'm going to drag us to the shop here. All right, we'll make our way down and see if this works. We may have to test this on mobile if the editor is not going to pick up that it is a video ad, which may be the case. So let's check it out. So here we go. I'm going to click for 100 Gs. It says showing rewarded ad. Everything seems to be working. If I close it, okay, good. You finished the ad. Here's 100 gems. And as you can see here, the character profile did indeed update. However, our shop profile did not. So what we need to do is simply get a reference to the shop and communicate back to it saying, hey, go ahead and update this profile. So let's go ahead and delegate that information. So inside that UI, let's open up our shop. And let's check out the logic for how it's currently updating that information. So here's our shop here. And basically what it's doing here is as we enter it, it grabs the player component and then it opens the shop and it specifies player diamond. So it's actually a UI manager. It's from the UI manager that we update that. So if we hop into the UI manager, you'll see here that there's a function called update gem count. And what we're going to do is we're just going to recall that function. So from our ads manager, let's go into the ads manager. From here, once we add 100 gems, we need to update the shop. So we're going to say UI manager.instance.update gem count. And when we update the gem count, we need to pass in the current count of our gems that we have. So we're going to say game manager.instance.player.gems. And I believe it's diamonds. So if we save this, that's going to then grab from the player the updated gems after we've added 100 and display the results. So let's go ahead and run this. Let Unity compile. Okay, and we'll make our way back to the shop. All right, let's go and collect some coins. We'll make our way back to the shop and hopefully both the character profile updates with the shop, just like we told it to. Let's go ahead. Let's approach our shop. We're going to click here for 100 Gs. Here's our ad. We close it. You finish the ad. Here's 100 gems. Now, it did give us 100 gems again, but once again, for some reason, our UI for our shop did not update. So let's go ahead and look at why. If we select that text here, let's first make sure that it did indeed not update. So if we actually go into the shop panel, and if we look at the player gem count, the text field, it says 17 gems still. So let's go ahead and look at the logic here. We call the UI manager and we update the gem count. We pass in the player's diamonds. Let's go to the player class and let's look at that diamonds variable and make sure that's what we're actually incrementing. So when we add gems, we say diamonds plus equals amount, and then we update the gem count. So actually, so when we update the gem counts, it's calling the UI manager, and that UI manager gem count is actually updating this. So for our individual shop, however, it's not updating properly. So let's see how that actually is working again. So inside our shop here, it says UI manager instance.open shop. That's what we need to call. We need to recall the open shop method. And when we do that, you can see here that it says plus gem count. So let's go ahead and just refresh the shop by calling that. So inside of our game manager here, or inside of our ads manager, instead of the update gem count, because that's our character profile, we actually need to say open shop. We're going to refresh the shop basically, and we're going to pass in the gem count, which is going to be our game manager instance, and then we want the player.diamonds. We'll save this. I'm going to save you the pain of me walking over there, so I'm going to pause the video and I'll see you when I'm back at the shop. Okay, so I'm in the shop. I have 17 coins. I'm going to click here for 100 Gs. Let's close it. And now I have 117 here and 117 here. That wraps up the challenge review. I'll see you guys in the next section.